Welcome everyone. Today is Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth holiday. So first, let me say happy Martin Luther King Day to everyone who is a part of this call. We are here again today. This is Why Not Inc. We are doing our Parent Power series for January 18th. We will be talking about knowing your rights. We have Attorney JoEllyn Jones, who will walk us through some do's, some don'ts, some tricks, and some treats. So once again, get your pen, your paper, your pencil, open your brain, put it on your tablet, put it on your phone, whatever you need to do to make sure you get the knowledge that she is about to impart. And without further ado, Attorney Jones.
Hello, everyone. I am JoEllyn Jones. I am a defense attorney here in New Jersey. So today I'm going to give you some basic tips that I think that you can use no matter where you live. I'm not going to give things that are too specific because obviously some of you may be in different states or different areas, so the law may vary from place to place. The first thing, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been practicing law for 10 years now. I have done criminal defense law my entire career. I have done some other things as well. I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy being an advocate for my clients in the courtroom. So I'm going to start with traffic stops, because I think that's probably one of the most common things that people encounter police with. Almost everybody has gotten stopped by the police for speeding or other traffic violations. And a lot of the interactions that we have seen that have been recorded or body worn cameras stem from some type of traffic stop with the police. So the first thing, my first will be kind of a tip when you're stopped by the police in a car. And that is, most of us do the same thing. We keep our registration and our insurance cards in our glove compartment. I think it's just something that's naturally done, so that we're told, put your registration, your insurance in your glove compartment. So my first tip would that be, well, don't put your registration and your insurance card in your glove compartment, but keep it above your visor. So above the driver's visor. There's a lot of little things that you could buy to put your information in your visor. And then that way it's right above there. The reason why I say that to people is because in some events, a lot of times when you're driving and you get stopped by the police and people say well, there was a movement, or they were grabbing or looking for something. A lot of times people are moving over, they're looking in their glove compartment, they're opening the glove compartment out. And that's an area where the police say that something can be hidden. They think that something can be there. So they look at that sometimes as a gesture that they're not sure what you're reaching for. But if you keep it over your visor, it's a very simple thing. You take it down, you're able to hand them your documentation. So that's my first tip. Now, once you're stopped, so you're pulled over, you're on the side of the street, you're thinking, okay, what's going on? Why am I stopping? Maybe you were speeding and you're thinking, I'm not really sure what to do. You are required to give the officer your license. You can't say, no, I'm not giving them your license, and no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not telling you who I am. No, you can give them your license. Give them your license, give them your registration. And you also have a right to ask the officer what his name is, him or her. And I'm saying him, which it could be him or her, what their name is. You can ask for their badge number. Those kind of things aren't disrespectful. You can ask for those things. I always tell people also to try to stay calm. You may feel like, well, I'm not sure, I'm a little uncomfortable, I don't know why I was stopped, but still, as best as you can, stay calm. Say hi. You can ask officers that, why did you stop me? And they all say they should give you a reason. They stopped you because of this reason or that reason. Thankfully, most traffic stops go along peacefully, but that's not always the case. We've seen it in a number of videos over and over again. So that's, at that point, if you're asked to get out of your car, just do it. I think that our biggest concern is to be able to get home safely. If you don't think that you are justified, or you don't think that they are justified in this stop, and they may not be, I always tell people the best bet is to come home to be able to fight another day, right? So if the stop wasn't justified, if you don't think the officer was treating you fairly, you can contact an attorney, someone like me, and we are willing to come in and advocate for you. But the first goal is to get you home back to your loved ones. Then, like I said, we're going to go in that scenario. If you're stopped and if they try to arrest you for a reason, don't resist arrest. Even if it's not a lawful arrest or you don't believe it's a lawful arrest, go ahead and go to the station, do what you're supposed to do. And when you get to the station, my advice to everyone always at every given time is don't give a statement. That's kind of my blatant advice. When they say you have a right to remain silent, exercise that right. Your next piece should be the ask for an attorney. If you're giving advice to your minor children and your child finds himself arrested, tell your children if they're a minor, first thing they should do is tell them I'm a minor. I would like to speak to my mom or an adult. If they are 18 and above, because a lot of us have adult children and they're out there, tell them I want to speak to an attorney. Their first nature, I think it is to want to reach out and call mom or dad. And I'm not saying mom and dad aren't good, but they're adults now. So mom and dad don't have the same rights to sit in a room with you and to go through that process. So to say, I would like to speak to an attorney. I want to exercise my right to remain silent, and I want to speak to an attorney. I always tell people we can, as most attorneys can come in later and help you get through whatever's going on. But once you've given a statement, once you have resisted arrest, it makes things a whole lot harder to help you in the long run. So once again, if you're stopped, try to keep your stuff above your advisor, hand it to the police officer. If they ask you to get out of the car, don't say, hey, you have a reason to stop me, I have a reason to get out of the car. Try to remain calm during as much as you can. If they try to arrest you or they're attempting to arrest you, go ahead and submit to the arrest, let them take you to the station, and then exercise your right to remain silent and ask to speak to an attorney. I think a lot of times when you get past that, hopefully that will get you in a safe environment where you're in a station. As far as another question I usually get about interactions with police, or can you record? That does vary from place to place. Normally you can record the police as long as you're not interfering in whatever's going on. So if you see something that you're uneasy about, as long as you're standing off to the side, you can go ahead, record what you're seeing, or record what you're viewing, as long as you're not trying to insert yourself into whatever is going on. So normally you're safe with that. I don't really know, like I said, that sometimes may change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but normally it's okay to record the police as long as you're not interfering in what is going on. Another interaction people usually have with law enforcement is when they could be walking down the street and a police officer approaches them. They can approach you. They can have a basic conversation with you. You also can turn that conversation down if you want. You're not legally obligated to answer those questions. What you are normally legally obligated to do is give you what they call your biographical information, your name. Hi, I'm this person. Yes, this is who I am. But beyond that, you're not really legally obligated to just sit here and have a conversation with an officer. And if you're unsure about what's going on, you can ask them, am I under arrest? And if they say no, you say, okay, I don't want to talk to you. You have a right to walk away. That is perfectly legal in most environments. So that's something that I always tell people to do. And hopefully most people don't really just get officers just approaching them randomly on the street. That's something that's not normal or something that doesn't happen as often. I wish I can give you I think a lot of people kind of want some like a golden piece of information that's going to say my kid won't be in this situation, or I won't be in this situation, or I won't be somehow put in danger in my interaction with the police. And reality is I can't tell you that. I can't tell you. I can tell you what you can do. I can tell you that you always benefit from staying calm. I always can tell you to benefit just complying what they say and then fighting it, being alive to be able to fight it another day. But hopefully, any interactions with law enforcement you will leave unscathed. You won't end up in a situation where you feel like you're being mistreated by law enforcement. I'm trying to think what else, some good tips. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask a question, JoEllyn. What,
Right.
I was wondering if you could touch on, like if the police actually come to your door, and then also if you feel like the police have actually violated your rights, what do you do?
Okay, so I would say, so the police come to your door and they just knock on your door and they say, hey, I'm here, I want to talk to you. You don't have to talk to them. Like you're in no obligation. They're like anybody else. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to invite them in. You don't have to answer their questions. You don't have to do any of those things. If the police knock on your door. Now, there are situations in which if law enforcement believes somebody's in danger in your house, right? So they get a phone call that we heard screaming coming out of the house, and they get here and they hear somebody screaming. They think somebody's in danger. It's like an exigent circumstance. They have a right to go in there to hopefully stop something bad from happening, right? If they believe something's going on. Now, if they come to your house and they say they have a warrant for your arrest, that's different. If they come to your house and say they have a warrant to search your property, you have a right to ask for the warrant. You have the right to read the warrant. You have the right to go over the warrant, but you can't really interfere with that. Now, that warrant can be fought later in the court of law. We believe that something's going to happen in that, it can be fought later. As far as when you believe that your rights have been violated by the police, depending on where you are, there's different channels you can take, right? There's internal affairs. You can ask for internal affairs investigation. If you believe it's something that you want to bring a suit against law enforcement, you would speak to a civil attorney, somebody who does that kind of stuff, like a civil rights lawsuit. But there is an internal affairs procedure where you can report the police's action that could be then investigated by their internal affairs unit. I know a lot of people are probably leery about it, but I do believe that there are some good internal affairs policies. Like they do go out and they will research it and they'll report it and they'll look into whatever the incident was and how you believe that you were violated. But I think that it's definitely, if you believe that something happened, if you're unsure about it, because every jurisdiction is slightly different, right? So how you may go about here contacting internal affairs for the state police may be slightly how you would do it differently from a municipality or a local police department, and how that process goes. So, but every police department has an internal affairs. But like I said, back to if they come to your house and they're knocking on your door, they just want to come in and talk, you're under no obligation to let them in your house. You're no obligation to have a conversation with them. If they're knocking on your door and say, I have a search warrant, you have to, it's a legally binding document. So you have to allow them to come in, do whatever the search says. And then from there, if you go, and if it ends up with criminal proceedings or criminal charges being pressed, you will go to the attorney and explain that, and an attorney will look to see if they believe this warrant was valid or was a justifiable warrant. Did that answer your question?
I got another one if anybody else, anything. All right, so I'm raising a little Black boy, and I know at some point I'm gonna have to have a conversation about his interactions with the police. So I was wondering if you could like tell me about like maybe some things that I want to touch on just to ensure, like you said, he makes it home safe if he's ever encountered by the police.
Okay, like I said, if he's a minor, as long as he's a minor, I would tell him to say that anytime he finds himself interacting with the police, the first thing he should do is say, I'm a minor and I want to speak to my mom or my dad or that adult. That would be the first thing I will always tell kids. I think that in raising children, we don't want to raise them to fear the police. And I think that it's natural instinct for people to try to explain whatever the behavior is. So they're asking or being asked questions by authority, that we want to automatically answer those questions, right? So if the teacher's asking you a question, if your parents are asking you a question, as a child, our natural thing, I can't be disrespectful, I'm supposed to answer the question of the adult. I always tell people to say, and when it comes to children, not to answer questions until their parents are present, right? Because the police could be talking to your child because they're trying to figure out what's going on. They think your child may saw something, or they may be talking to your child because they think your child may have done something. And I don't think that we should put it up to our children to know the difference and why they're being questioned, or how to answer those questions. So I think one of the first things you should always do is tell your child, if you're approached by the police, if you're in the presence of the police, if the police officer's asking you questions, tell them, I'm a minor and I want my mom present. I want that adult here. I want that person there. Once they hit 18, that next step is, I want an attorney present. I'm not comfortable answering your questions. I want an attorney present. That's one of the things I always think they should do when being approached by officers. The next thing is, try to teach your children to stay calm, which I think that is counterintuitive. Like, I think that in today's climate, when you're watching different interactions and they're seeing things on TV and they're watching this, in their mind, they're trying to think that, oh my gosh, I don't know. Should I be they're just nervous. I think I get nervous sometimes when I get stopped, but I know I haven't done, like, I may have been speeding, but I haven't done anything else. And I get a little nervous when I'm being stopped by the police. So try their best to stay calm. Try their best not to raise their voice, not to, like I said, do movements. Try to keep, if they're driving, try to keep their registration and insurance card up there as well. If they're young guys and he's in a car, tell him to turn his music down if he has his music up. Like, just little things like that, I think, go a long way. Try to be respectful. Say yes, officer, no officer, here's my information, to do the best they can in that way. But also, I think that, I'm trying to say how to say this. We have a lot of things that young people do. It's just nature by nature. And I think that it's important to have conversations. We're not at a point in our world in this time where young Black boys get a chance to be young Black boys, right? That their behaviors that almost every child has, right? And everybody does, that they get looked at as just youthful indiscretions. It's not always the same. And sometimes they could be doing the same thing that somebody else with less pigmented skin, a young white kid is doing, and they're looked at differently for doing that. So I always say that realistically, we have to tell our kids to be very careful about the company that they keep, about what they do. I'll give an example of smoking weed, right? It's something that I think a lot of people have tried. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's something that probably, I think they pull, like, most Americans have tried to smoke weed at some point in time in their life. It's something that's very common, especially in their youth. And it's something that young people do, and it's equal among races. It's not like young Black men smoke marijuana more than others. Well, for those who know the smell of marijuana, it's an obvious smell. If you know that smell, and that smell alone, driving around after you smoke, driving around, being in a car after you smoke, or after a friend smoked, can lead to a different interaction with the police than you may want it to be. So I'm not telling people this, tell their kids, if you smoke weed, don't go anywhere, or tell their kids it's okay to smoke weed. But what I'm saying is that is something that I have read in police reports over and over again that have led to interactions, people being taken out of the car, things going a little bit further. Drinking, another one, drinking and driving, or drinking, or the smell of alcohol, or having open containers in the car. So those are things that you have to be mindful of. You should be mindful of anyway. We shouldn't be drinking and driving anyway, but it's things that people do. And you have to be mindful. I think it's a conversation that parents may not want to have with their kids, but like, hey, look, I'm not saying you're going to smoke, but you have a friend who's smoking, you may not want to have them driving around in your car. You may not be drinking, but if you were drinking, or you don't want to have open containers in your car, that's something that you don't want to do. And it's something that I think that we can't, as parents, be naive, like, oh, my son's not going to smoke. My kid's not going to ever drink before they're supposed to drink. Yeah, I mean, it's stuff that teenagers do. And the consequences sometimes are graver for little brown kids than they are for other children. Any other questions?
JoEllyn, what about searches? So I don't know if you touched on that a little bit before, but I don't know if you need to consent to search, or if you could touch on that a little bit.
So it depends on what they're searching, okay. Right? So like what I was saying earlier, so let's talk about your houses. So normally in your house, the police can't come in your house and search you unless they have a search warrant, except for there's exigent circumstances, or if they're invited in, right? So if you say, officer, come in my living room, and they're allowed to now look through your living room, and they find something they think is illegal, they could then, they at the point have reasonable suspicion, they have a right to then at some point search, or at least call for a search warrant. They have probable cause to be able to call for a search warrant because they're in your house. They can confiscate whatever the illegal thing is they say, and then they can get a search warrant to search your house, right? So normally your house is your protected zone. The police just can't come into your house and start walking around and looking for stuff without having a search warrant. Now, cars are iffy, right? So if they're in a car and they smell alcohol, they smell, like I said, they smell marijuana in your car, guess what? That smell of marijuana has given them a right to search. Now, I will say this. Marijuana laws are starting to change and it's becoming legal from state to state. So we'll have to see how that's going to play out in the long run, right? So we don't really know what that's going to look like. So here in New Jersey, we just passed the legalized marijuana for people of a certain age. And so I'm not sure how that's going to play out, because what is going to be considered driving under influence with marijuana. Like I said, it has a unique smell. Marijuana can stay in your clothes, or that smell, especially if you're a chronic smoker, can stay around you for a long period of time. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out, or how it's going to end up playing out in laws. But normally they need permission to search your car, right? I tell people all the time, if you don't have, a lot of times they'll say to you, people have heard, like officers will say, hey, I want to search your car. Do you give me permission? And if you don't give me permission, I'll get a warrant. Okay, fine. If you don't have anything in your car anyway, then go get a warrant, because most of them aren't going to go through that extra step to do it anyway. I always tell people, err on the side of no. They ask you, can they search? Say no. Say no. They want to get a warrant to do it, then let them go through that process to do that. But don't say yes automatically, yes, you can come search my car. Just because your car is protected. Now, they have a thing for most car, which is called plain sight. So you'll see a lot of times where people will say they got stopped and the officer had the flat light if it's at night and they're looking like in your car, because if they see something, they can see something in plain sight. If they can see it, if they think that they see something underneath your seat, they then have a right to go in and search that because they found something in your car. So there are, like, it's a lot of little caveats how it goes. So it all depends. But normally they can't just go in your car and search it. They can't go in your trunk. They can't go in your glove compartment. They can't just come in your house. They have to have reasonable suspicion for your car. They have to have probable cause. It has to have like other steps to it. They just can't just go in and do it. Any other questions? I like questions, because then it had to guide me and tell me what people are interested in knowing.
I watch a lot of Law and Order, so
Right.
Those are my questions. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that when you watch TV, you're like, okay, is this happening or that happening? And things just change different in every state. Some states are like, absolutely not. They're very strict on certain things. Other states are a little bit more lenient. But normally, like I said, police can't just come in your house. Normally, they just can't go through your car just because, or even go through your pocketbook or your book bag or something like that. And also with warrants are normally specific, right? So if the warrant says, hey, we're looking for a body, they can't start looking in your jewelry box because the body's not obviously going to be in your jewelry box, right? So like, but if they're warrants for drugs, they can look almost anywhere because it's drugs. Like it's something that could be hidden anywhere. So warrants are normally specific, and it'll say, okay, is this warrant good for the house? Is it good for a car? Is it good for certain other properties on the property? It's usually specific to that. So you're right to say, hey, you're right to ask. If they come knock on your door and say, hey, we want to search your house. Do you have a warrant? Do you have one? If they have one, trust me, they're going to give it to you.
So we have a question from Facebook, and the question is, how much time am I allotted to read the search warrant if provided?
So I can't really answer that specifically. You usually have time to the warrant. So it depends on the warrant. So they have to give it to you if you're there, right? They have to give you the search warrant if you're there. But some warrants are what they call, and I'll say Breonna Taylor's case, the issue in that case that they promote no knock warrants, where they're not required to knock before they come into the house. So it really depends on the warrant. Some warrants are considered no knock warrants. Now they may give you a little bit of time, but they're going to probably give you that time outside of the house. Because normally what happens when they issue a warrant, they're going to get whoever's in the house out of the house to alleviate any time for the tampering of what they will consider the tampering of evidence, right? So they'll probably give you the warrant, let you read over the warrant, but normally everything's going to happen simultaneously. You'll be outside reading the warrant, and maybe inside searching for whatever they're looking for. So, and to be honest, I've never been given like you have like 20 minutes before they can go in and actually search. But normally it's usually a lot of warrants are either no knock warrants or they're knock warrants. They have to knock, announce them, they're knocking and announce. So they knock, announce themselves, and then they come in. So, and they usually come in and get the people out. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or any other specific areas people have questions or concerns about?
Yes, I have a question. Can you speak a little more to riding in a vehicle, and this is more geared to young adults or new drivers that might be riding with their friends, and you know, the friend may have weed or alcohol on them or something like that, and you get pulled over and the police smell that. Can you speak a little bit as to what happens to the driver and what happens to the friend and things like that?
So that will still vary from, first of all, it's going to vary from state to state, but it's also going to vary from the actual scenario. So if I'm driving in a car and I'm the driver and my friend has marijuana on them or another illegal substance or something on them that they're not supposed to have, and we get stopped and for whatever reason the officer finds it or smells it, as long as if it's contained to just my friend may be the only person liable. The driver may not be liable in any way, shape, or form. So it all depends. But let's say that person has a book bag and that item is in the book bag and the person gets stopped. They can ultimately charge everyone who's in the car for that item in the book bag. Because if nobody says, hey, it's mine, it belongs to me. And even in cases where sometimes they say, hey, it's mine, they still can charge everybody. So it will really depend on your friend and whether that person took ownership for the item or they didn't take ownership for the item. So it really would be very specific because normally a driver in a car, if you're the person driving the car, it is assumed that you kind of know what's everything that's in a car. They call it like a constructive possession. Like you know what's coming in and out of your vehicle. Did I answer your question?
You did. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
JoEllyn, this is Demetrica. Like Teresa's question.
Yes.
Like I've seen where, right, everybody is charged and then it's going to be the burden of the state or the prosecutor to
Correct.
prove that 1 through 4 are responsible, or they committed the crime, or 1 committed the crime, or number 2 committed the crime. So the burden then shifts to the state to prove if you're going to say this one bag of weed constructively was possessed by 4 people, then the state has to prove that if they decide to go forward. Usually, I see it as just a strategy to try to get someone to confess for the sake of a friend if it goes down like that. But typically, like JoEllyn said, the construction, everyone will be charged if no one says, you know what, I'll take it.
Yes. And that may be different, right? So like for a bag of weed or a drug or something else or whatever, but like in situations like say there's a handgun, right? They may still proceed with everybody because they said it's constructively possessed by everybody. If everybody had access to whatever that item is. But I do believe it is definitely a tactic of the state saying, hey, we're going to charge everybody, and then hopefully somebody who actually belongs to it is going to take ownership for it. Any other questions?
So I have another Facebook question for you. When being pulled over by the police, do I have to roll my window all the way down or just provide enough space to hand the officer my license, registration, etc.?
That's an interesting question. I've never answered. I think that you're required to give them your documentation. I don't know you have to roll your window completely down. I think you're required to give them enough for you to be able to hear them and then be able to hear you and be able to hand them over their documentation, hand over your documentation. I've never actually had that scenario come up where somebody was charged, they didn't roll their window down enough or being told to roll their window down and more. So that actually be something I probably will look into, but I don't think that, I think you have to roll it down enough to be able to hand them your documentation.
Thank you.
Anybody? Any other questions? And I think go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess that means you did a very good job since no one has any other questions when, you know, you're right at their fingertips and they can pretty much ask anything they want.
Yes.
So that's a good thing.
And I will say this, I think that everything is definitely, most scenarios, we probably can give you I could probably give you 20 million different scenarios. And you change that fact pattern one way or the other, it can make a very big difference, right? Whether or not, like I said, the friend you're in the car with has something on them, whether it's in their book bag, whether they dropped it on the side of the car, whether they did something else, like everything could change just slightly. And every jurisdiction has things a little bit differently. I would just say that and not saying in closing, but like in talking that when you have an interaction police, give them your biographical information. Try not to lie to them. I always tell people you're better not say anything at all than lying to the officer, because then that could add more trouble. So don't try to explain yourself away. Ask to speak to an attorney. Ask to speak to have your parent present if you're a minor. I think there are some of the basic things that if we do, you're in a better position. I was sharing with Regina and some people earlier. I can be mouthy, right? I can be very mouthy, and in the courtroom, I'm full of fire and I'm extremely mouthy in the courtroom. But I always tell my clients, let me be mouthy, right? And I tell people the same thing when we get stopped by the police. You know what? You may be absolutely right. This officer was probably absolutely wrong for coming into your house, or they didn't have any right to search your car. But just be quiet for now. Bring the information to an attorney, and trust me, they will fight it for you in the long run. They'll advocate for you in the long run. It's not necessarily worth it. You want to be mouthy, and you don't want to be mouthy with the guy who's holding the gun. I mean, it's not something that you want to do. You want to be able to say, hey, this is my name. This is who I am. Here's my license and my registration. Or this is where I live. If you find yourself being under arrest for whatever reason, even in your mind, you're thinking like, this is crazy. I shouldn't be being arrested. I didn't do anything wrong. And you probably are right. You may not have done anything wrong. So go to the station, get processed, tell them that you don't want to give a statement and you want an attorney if you're an adult. If not, you want to speak to your parents, and hopefully if you're a minor, your parents would then be and say, okay, we want to bring a lawyer in. A lot of times parents will tell people, and I will tell parents this, don't be offended if your child's attorney does not want to talk to you, right? Because your child is their client. And sometimes they need to talk to their client privately because they need to get really what happened out from their kid so that they can be best defend them in a way. So that's another piece of advice I'll give to parents. When if your kid ever finds himself in trouble and they have whether a assigned counselor, they have an attorney. I know sometimes people are like, well, I'm paying for the lawyer, it's my kid. Sometimes that lawyer needs some time with your kid to talk to them so they can really help better defend them and really be able to put them in the best position and explain things so they also understand what's going on. The kid really understands because they need to be able to defend your child. So a lot of times parents get in and say, oh, just tell the cop. No, let an attorney come in before you start giving statements out.
Do we have any further questions?
Nice.
Well, as I stated before, that means you've done a good job. And as always, I appreciate you being able to share your knowledge with us and your candor. I'm sure that everyone on the call appreciates it as well. For everyone on the call, you will receive, of course, a survey asking about the session and future sessions. Our next Parent Power series will take place on February 8th. We will be talking about suffering in silence. We're in some very turbulent times right now, and depression is real. Depression is real. It's a real thing, and it causes a lot of chaos. And sometimes we don't recognize the signs, and we just think that we're sad, or we think that life is just not going well. But there is that thing called depression. So I would advise you that if you know any friends or any family members that you think may be going through some things, and it may not be full-fledged depression yet, but we don't want it to turn into that. So join us on February 8th. We'll be back here again with our Parent Power series with Dr. Yasmin Bradshaw. She will be talking about, once again, suffering in silence. And if you have not liked Why Not Inc., please like and share. Like and share. If you have not visited our website, please do so also. If you have any teenage daughters or sons who are between the ages of 15 to 18, we are in the process of putting on a leadership academy. So we have a lot of good things going on. Take time to check us out. If you have children between the ages of, I believe it's 6 and 12, we're doing a chess club that starts the end of this month. So take time to check us out. Pass on our information to those who may need it. But everybody have a good night.
Good night. Thank you for having me.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.